You're a nobody. Don't pretend you matter, my mom said like she was commenting on the weather. Honestly, we forget you exist half the time, my brother Ryan added, stabbing at his eggs, so I clinked my fork against my glass and said calm as anything. This won't take long. Just 3 sentences. By the second sentence, my mom's face had gone pale. I didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't even blink. When you grow up in my family, you learn to wear your face like armor. You learn to stay still while they throw their words like knives. That's how brunch started. They call it brunch, but let's be honest. It's just Sunday lunch with mimosas and extra judgment. The food changes, the vibe never does. We were halfway through some aggressively dry quitch when my mom decided it was time for her usual performance review. That's what I secretly call it, the part where she critiques my entire existence, like I'm an underperforming intern in a company I never applied to work at. So when she hit me with, "You're a nobody," I didn't react. Ryan laughed like we were all in on the joke. We weren't. I reached for my glass, gave it that soft little clink, and said, "This won't take long, just 3 sentences." They looked up. My mom mid-bite, Mark, the man she married when I was 15, the one who replaced my dad and made sure I knew it, leaned back in his chair. "Police?" I said. "This copy's for you." Then I pulled a black folder from my bag and slid it across the table. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet, deliberate nudge. Ryan looked confused, like I was handing out R.A. Sommes. Mark looked curious. My mom didn't move. She just stared at it. Finally, she reached for it, opened it, flipped to page 1, then 3. I watched her face change, slowly like she was realizing the brakes didn't work and the wall was coming fast. Her fingers started to tremble. Mark went pale. Ryan froze, fork halfway to his mouth. She hit the last page and whispered, "You little bitch." Mark stood up, chair scraping against the tile. "You said you deleted that stuff." I stood too, smoothed my sweater, picked up my bag. "The originals are already with people who matter," I said. "That one's just for your personal enjoyment." And then I walked out, didn't even grab my coat. 3 months before that brunch, I'd moved back in with them. Told them I couldn't afford my apartment, said I needed help. My mom said yes, but made it clear she didn't actually want me there. She wanted rent, chores, and zero attitude. Ryan, who was 24 and still unemployed, lived there too. No rent, no chores. No problem. She gave me the laundry room. Not the guest room, not your old room, but the laundry room. There was still a dryer in there. It rattled at night like it was haunted, but I didn't care. I wasn't there to bond. I wasn't there because I had nowhere else to go. I was there because I knew they were hiding something, and I planned to find it. So I smiled. I did dishes. I nodded through Mark's boomer jokes about millennials not knowing how to do laundry, which was funny considering I was literally doing his. I stayed quiet, observant. The thing about being treated like a nobody your whole life is, you get good at watching, you learn patterns, you remember everything. Growing up, my life wasn't a sitcom gave one to my dad, and the one I slid across the table that morning, that was just a souvenir. 3 nights after I walked out, their debut. It was more like Survivor, minus the prize money. From the outside, we looked normal. Christmas cards, beach vacations, a fridge covered in Ryan's stick, figure drawings. Inside, it was constant blame and control. Ryan could break a vase and be called spirited. I spilled a cup of juice once and got sent to my room for being careless and dramatic. When I was 9, I won an art contest at school. I showed my mom the certificate. She said, "You really should focus on science. Art won't get you anywhere." That same week, Ryan got a participation ribbon for Best Listener. She framed it. Stuff like that builds up. You start to wonder if you really are less likable, less worthy, less seen. The only one who didn't treat me like that was my dad. He wasn't flashy, but he showed up. Helped with homework, made the best grilled cheese, listened when I talked about books. He remembered the small things. He made me feel steady. I never understood why my mom hated him so much. She'd roll her eyes when he spoke, sigh when he laughed, talk to him like he was an inconvenience she couldn't return. Then one day, when I was 12, she called me into the living room. She showed me a text on her phone. One line, "If you take her, I'll kill you both." She said it was from my dad, said it proved he was dangerous. She told me she was filing for full custody to protect me. I believed her. I was 12. The next thing I knew, court orders, custody battles, new rules, no phone calls, no visits. My dad disappeared from my life overnight, like he'd been erased. She called those the rebuilding years. That's funny, because she never rebuilt anything. She just rearranged her power. I became her scapegoat. Ryan became her golden boy. Mark moved in, and everything I used to know about family went up in smoke. Fast forward to my 20s. For years, I didn't think about my dad much. I'd packed him away in this mental box labeled dangerous. But sometimes, when I'd hear someone talk about their dad, I'd feel this ache. like grief for someone who wasn't dead. And that message, the one that supposedly proved everything, never stopped feeling wrong. My dad wasn't that guy. He cried watching Finding Nemo. He said, "Safety first," like a mantra. He apologized if he raised his voice. He wasn't the "I'll kill you both" type, so one night, when I couldn't sleep, I texted the number I'd memorized as a kid. "Hi. I don't know if this is still your number, but I wanted to say hello, Leah." 15 minutes later, he replied, "Leah, I've been waiting 10 years for this." We met in a park 3 days later. He looked the same, older, smaller, but the same. We sat on a bench, 2 cups of coffee between us, and I finally asked about the message. He shook his head. "I didn't send it. I never would." He didn't try to beg or spin it. Just looked me in the eyes and said, "I'm sorry you thought I could." And right then, I believed him. Something in me unclenched. The noise in my head went quiet, so I decided to find out the truth, not for him, for me. I got trained, certified, became a licensed private investigator, digital forensics record tracing the real deal. I spent a year building my skills, then I moved home under the excuse of losing my job. Mom rolled her eyes, said I could stay in the laundry room. Perfect. I started searching. Quietly, it didn't take long. Behind a pile of sweaters in the closet was an old laptop, password protected, but not beyond me. Inside were folders, boring names like Legal One Assets Backup, and my personal favorite, Donut Open. Inside Donut Open was a Word document. "If you take her, I'll kill you both." Saved 5 days before the date she claimed it was sent. There were comments in the margins, edits, even a note that said, "Too dramatic." I found emails between her and Mark from before they were even together, talking about making him look unstable and protecting the assets. There were bank records too, money wired to offshore accounts, hidden under fake company names, all linked to Mark. They stole everything. The money, the house, my dad's reputation. They built their perfect little family on a lie. So yeah, I printed it all, made copies. As a knock at my door, it was my dad. He smiled, tired but real. I got the call. He said, "It's happening." His lawyer had reopened the case. The filings were in motion. We sat on my couch, drinking tea. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I didn't do it for you." I told him. "I did it for me." My phone buzzed. "Ryan, what did you do?" Mom's freaking out. Mark's yelling. They won't tell me what's going on. I didn't reply. They deserved to sit in that silence. 2 days later, the legal letter hit their mailbox. Certified mail. Thick envelope. I wasn't there, but apparently my mom screamed, dropped her wine glass. Mark turned white. Ryan started texting again. "You don't have to do this. We can fix this." Fix what? The forged message, the stolen money, the decades of gaslighting. No, that ship burned. The court moved fast. The evidence was airtight. Emails, documents, timestamps, bank records. The judge called it clear pattern of deception. Translation, they lied. Repeatedly. The ruling was simple, full restitution. Every stolen cent returned with penalties. They sold the house, the cars, the accounts gone. Mom moved into a small condo with leaky faucets and paper, thin walls. Ryan vanished as soon as the money did. Unfollowed me. Haven't heard from him since. Mark tried to play dumb. Claimed he didn't know. About the offshore accounts. The signatures said otherwise. My dad bought a little house. Not fancy, but peaceful. A porch that catches afternoon light. When I visited, he handed me a mug of coffee. "No speech," he said. "Just thanks." We sat there in silence. The good kind, the kind that doesn't need fixing. He asked, "What are you going to do now?" I said, "Live." He nodded. "Good plan." A week later, I got an email from my mom. Subject line, "You'll understand one day." It was full of the usual, how I betrayed her, how she did what she had to do, how I was always ungrateful. I didn't reply. Just archived it. Labeled the folder unsolicited fiction. There wasn't some big movie moment after that. No revenge montage. No public speech. Just quiet, real quiet. A kitchen that's actually mine. A home that feels like home. A dad who laughs and never uses it to hurt me. They used to call me a nobody. Said it to my face. Funny thing about nobodies. We watch. We remember. We learn the system. And when we finally speak, we don't scream. We bring documents. They said I didn't matter. Turns out, I was the only one keeping track of everything. After everything collapsed, people kept asking if I felt happy. Like revenge automatically meant joy. I didn't. Don't get me wrong, I slept better, breathed easier, but it wasn't happiness. It was quiet. The kind of quiet you get after a storm finally moves on, and all that's left is debris and sunlight. You don't dance in it. You just stand there and take inventory. I spent the first month after the court ruling cleaning. Not out of OCD or guilt. Just I needed control again. My little apartment became my reset zone. I scrubbed the walls, boxed up old stuff, deleted numbers I'd kept out of habit. I threw out a stack of birthday cards from my mom. Each one signed, "Love, Mom," in handwriting that always felt faker than the message. I kept one, though. The last one she sent before everything blew up. It said, "I hope one day you realize I only wanted what's best for you." I read it sometimes. Not out of nostalgia, more like research. Proof that some people never stop lying, even when they think they're telling the truth. My dad called every few days. At first, it was awkward. We didn't know how to be a family again. I didn't even know if I wanted to. But he never pushed. He'd just say things like, "Made lasagna tonight. Used too much cheese." Or "Saw a dog that looked like yours from middle school." What was his name again? He was easing me back in, slowly, carefully. And I realized that's what good love feels like. No guilt trips, no ultimatums, just presence. After a while, I started visiting more. He'd show me old photo albums, stuff Mom never let me see. There were pictures of me as a toddler, sitting on his shoulders, of us building a sandcastle at the beach, of him reading me a book with my head on his arm. For years, I thought he'd abandoned me. Turns out, he'd just been erased. My mom didn't just take him away, she rewrote the story to make sure I never went looking. That's what still stings. Not the money, not the lies, the fact that she stole memories and replaced them with fear. One night, while we were looking at photos, Dad said, "You were a curious kid, always asking why. Drove your mom crazy." I laughed, but it hit me. That's exactly why she couldn't stand me. Curiosity is dangerous to people who build their lives on lies. Around that time, I started getting calls from Ryan. Missed calls, then texts. First, it was, "Hey," then, "Can we talk?" Then, I didn't know what was going on, I swear. He wanted to play the innocent card, but I remembered too much. All those times he watched her tear me apart and said nothing. The way he laughed when she called me dramatic. He knew enough to stop it, and he didn't. So, no, he didn't get a redemption arc. I left his messages on read. Maybe that makes me cold. Maybe it makes me free. A few weeks later, I ran into Mark at the grocery store. He was alone, standing in the discount aisle, holding a can of soup. I almost walked the other way, but he saw me. "Leah," he said, like my name was a question. He looked smaller. Not physically, just deflated. The kind of man who's been stripped of all his props. "You ruined everything," he said. I looked him in the eye and said, "No, Mark, you did." Then I walked off. Didn't wait for a response. Didn't need one. My therapist says closure isn't about getting answers. It's about accepting that some people will never give you the truth, even when it's in writing. Speaking of therapy, yeah, I finally went. First session, the counselor asked, "What do you want out of this?" I said, "To stop flinching when I hear my name in someone else's mouth." She smiled. That's a good start. We unpacked things. Like how I'd learned to measure my worth through other people's moods. How I'd become addicted to silence because it felt safer than confrontation. Healing wasn't dramatic. It was slow, messy, sometimes boring. Some days, I'd wake up ready to forgive the world. Other days, I'd see a photo of my mom on social media, smiling, pretending nothing happened, and I'd feel that old rage bubble up. But instead of drowning in it, I'd write. That became my outlet. Not revenge posts or cryptic quotes, just raw entries in a private journal. Memories, reactions, the truth unedited. One night I wrote, "Forgiveness isn't freedom. Boundaries are." That line stuck with me. I stopped waiting to feel sorry for her. I stopped needing her to understand. She doesn't get that privilege anymore. Around month 6, Dad invited me to his housewarming barbecue. It was small, just him, a few friends, and his new dog Murphy, the kind of golden retriever that looks like he's never had a bad thought. I brought brownies. Everyone was laughing, grilling normal. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own family. At one point, I caught Dad watching me with this soft smile. "What?" I asked. He said, "Nothing. Just glad you're here." I hadn't heard that tone in so long. It almost broke me. Later that night, after everyone left, we sat on the porch again. Same mugs, same quiet. He said, "I used to think I failed you." I shook my head. "You didn't. You just got outnumbered." He smiled. "Still feels good to hear you say that." We didn't talk about Mom. Didn't need to. Some ghosts don't deserve names anymore. A few months after that, the court sent me the final closure documents. Case officially closed. Restitution paid. No appeals. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of a chapter I'd been forced to live in for too long. I burned the extra copies of the evidence files, not out of guilt, but because I was done carrying proof of other people's sins. I wanted space for something else. I started painting again. Nothing serious, just acrylics on cheap canvas. Abstract stuff, colors that looked like emotions I couldn't name. My therapist said, "You're reclaiming your voice." Maybe. Or maybe I just like watching color spread and not knowing exactly how it'll turn out. There's peace and unpredictability when you've lived your whole life under control. About a year after the brunch, I got another email from my mom. No subject line this time, just a single sentence. "You destroyed this family." I didn't even open the attachment, just hit delete, because here's the thing, there was never a family to destroy. There was a system, a hierarchy, and I stepped out of it. That's not destruction, that's escape. People online love the idea of revenge arcs, of villains getting what they deserve, of poetic justice. But real life doesn't come with background music or applause. Real justice feels like peace and exhaustion holding hands. It feels like coming home to silence and realizing it's not lonely anymore. It's calm. I still have bad days. Sometimes I wake up and half expect a text from her telling me I'm selfish. Sometimes I dream about that brunch table, the clink of the glass, the sound of her fork dropping. I wake up shaking, then I remember it's over. That's what healing really is. Remembering that the nightmare already ended, even when your body hasn't caught up. A few months ago, I got invited to speak at a local workshop for women recovering from family trauma. The organizer found me through a blog post I wrote about gaslighting. At first, I said no. I didn't want to relive it. But she said, "You don't have to tell them how you were hurt. Tell them how you survived." That hit me. So I went. I stood in front of 20 women, different ages, same haunted look I used to have, and said, they told me I was a nobody. So I started paying attention. Turns out, that's what made me dangerous. The room went quiet. Not the uncomfortable kind. The kind where everyone's breathing the same truth. Afterward, one woman came up and hugged me. She whispered, "Thank you for saying it out loud." That's when I realized maybe that's the real ending. Not the legal win. Not the revenge. The ripple effect. The fact that my story, the one they tried to bury, gets to live and maybe save someone else. My dad came to watch that day. He stood in the back, clapping softly when I finished. Later, we went for ice cream. He asked if I missed her. I thought about it. "No," I said. "I miss the idea of her. The mom I used to pretend she was." He nodded. "That's fair. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to be deep. It just needs to be honest." A few weeks ago, I drove past their old house. The "for sale" sign was gone. A new family had moved in, kids' bikes in the yard, flowers in the window. Life had moved on without them. Without me. I didn't feel sad. Just complete. Like the circle had finally closed. When I got home, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the floor with Murphy's head in my lap. I thought about all the versions of myself that didn't make it here. The scared 12-year-old. The silent teenager, the desperate 20, something in the laundry room. I wanted to tell them, you were never crazy. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to believe you were. That's the hardest part of abuse. How it warps reality until you start apologizing for breathing. I don't apologize anymore. I don't explain myself to people who confuse guilt with love. I live quietly. I work. I paint. I visit Dad. Sometimes we joke about starting a podcast called The Nobody Files. I told him it'd go viral. He said, "Only if Murphy co-hosts." I laughed. It felt good to laugh. I still have the black folder. Not the papers. Those are gone. But the folder itself. It sits on my bookshelf. A reminder, not of them, but of me. The day I finally stood up and said, "No more." People think power is loud, dramatic, explosive. But real power, it's calm. It's the sound of your own voice saying, "I'm done," and meaning it. So, yeah, maybe I was a nobody. But here's the thing about nobodies we survive, we learn. And one day we stand up at brunch, clink a glass, and change everything with 3 sentences.